Hi, this is Tom from World Class Coaching with another animated drill. This is a vision and awareness activity that also includes passing and turning that I really like. And I got this from the folks over at socceriq.com. And they'll put a link in the description here so you can go to that. But it's SOCCEREYEQ.com. So Soccer IQ. And the whole idea of it is getting players to be aware of where they turn and why they turn, and using cues to get the players to turn based on certain information. Now, the way I always start this with my players is I'll just do it as a regular passing and turning exercise. So we'll start out with one player that will end up being on this end, all right? And then we'll make him a little bit smaller. It's kind of big there. So we'll make him a little bit more appropriate to the size. And these areas, this is about 10 yards from these cones down to these cones. I like using dots for these exercises. Since they're flat, the ball can roll over them freely without disturbing the location. So I like to use those flat field dots. If you've ever seen those, very useful. And so I'll put a player here, and then we'll have a player at the far end as well. Find a player with their back to the game here. And so we'll have this player here at the far end. And again, we'll make it just a little bit smaller. And we'll copy these and we'll put these same people over on this side as well. Now we need a third player, so we need that player in the middle. And so we'll have a player in the middle showing to receive the ball, and we'll start that player here. So there's a player in the center on this side, as well as a player in the center on this side. So then we'll have the ball begin at one end or the other. It really doesn't matter which end the ball begins at. So one player starts with the ball at their feet, and we'll have this player, we'll start it down here just so it's the player's facing that way. So what we'll do to begin with is that these players will have a ball, and the player in the middle will receive the ball, turn. I'll begin by doing an opening the gate turn where the player receives the ball on this back foot. And so when the ball comes in, they're looking to receive it with their farthest foot opening up and then receiving it and passing it to the player at the far end. So we're just receiving that, opening up, passing to the player at the far end. And then we'll repeat that. The player will check away, coming outside of the area, checking back to the top, and then coming back through the gate to show for the ball. So now that the ball's on that side, they're going to face the other direction. So let's get rid of him, and we'll put him in the other direction. So we'll have the player coming back to receive the ball, and they'll receive it here in the middle, and now they'll repeat that turn, opening up, coming through. Now, obviously, these same patterns can be completed regardless of what kind of turn you're going to use. You can use an inside of the foot turn where the player receives the ball at their feet, and if they receive it on their right foot, they're going to turn that ball to the left, and so they're going to receive the ball across their body and bring it outside this yellow cone before passing it down this end, and then coming to the outside because they passed it on this end. Now they're going to check through again as they did before, and then come back through the gate to show for the ball and end up facing in this direction as they were before. So the ball is back down at this end. So the player's just going to continue to repeat that, turning one way, turning the other. So after you've done that, and after obviously you rotate the players in the middle, and you've completed an outside of the foot turn as well, perhaps a behind the leg, like a Cruyff turn as well. So you've completed different types of turns. And now what you start to work on is you start to work on the awareness of this middle player. And so what we want is the ball is at this end and is going to be passed into them as before. And so let's say we put a passing line in here. So this player is going to pass the ball down the line between the cones. So it's a passing exercise as well. So we've got to get quality passes into this middle player. But before this middle player receives the ball, they have to look over their shoulder, and this is where these dots come into play. And so now the player has these two cones, these two field dots, whichever, it doesn't matter. You can use pennies, you can use whatever's available. And now the player in the middle has to turn and look to see which dot is being shown. If it's the red dot, then they're going to receive that ball, and then they're going to take a turn that takes them around that red dot. So we're going to take them here. They're going to come this way. We'll spin this around to face the other direction. So the player is going to receive the ball around this corner basically before passing the ball back down the line here to the next player in line. So the power of this is getting players to check their shoulder. And there's so few players especially young players, do a really good job of checking their shoulder to see where the pressure is, where the space is before they receive the ball. So this pattern gets them checking their shoulder so that they are now aware. They're thinking about which dot is going to be held up, and they have to turn in that direction. Now the next phase of this, obviously you're going to rotate all the players through this pattern again. The next phase I'll do with this is you turn the opposite way. So now if a red dot is shown, you need to turn to the left. If a yellow dot is shown, you turn to that red dot. So it just depends on, now you've got to do the opposite. You've got to flip it in your mind to think about where to turn. And that's a really powerful tool for players to be able to, think on their feet. Now they don't just have to recognize, now they have to recognize it, think about it, and then turn in the proper direction. So, that's one that I really like to use, and it's going to confuse the players at first, but they're going to get comfortable with each of these. So each time they get comfortable with one, it's important that you change it so that they now can grow and learn from the next one. Now, the next pattern I set up from this is I'll widen these dots out, and I'll have the player then taking a position on one dot. All right, so they're checking toward that dot. And obviously that's a key part of this, is that we want the players checking to the ball. So the player's going to go wide, and they're going to check here, and they're going to open their body to receive the ball. And so now what we'll do is we'll have this player again showing the dots as they go, and we'll give this player on the ball different things to do based on the color that's shown. So let's say, for example, if the ball is passed in and player 2 here checks their shoulder and they see a red dot, then what they're supposed to do then is pass the ball immediately back to the other player. So they're going to receive the ball, they're going to pass it back, I should say, to the same player. So they're going to pass it back to that same player. So red means turn around, go back the other way. If a yellow cone is shown, or a yellow dot or yellow penny, however, which colors that you're using, doesn't matter, then that player is going to open up. So let's say we'll switch this out now. We'll get rid of that, and we'll give them a yellow one. And so when they show the yellow dot, now that player opens up and continues to pass the ball there. After that ball is passed, then we want this player to run into the middle of the area to start the pattern again, before checking to the outside and showing to the yellow dot, receiving the ball from that player, from the far player, the player at the far end, player number 3. So now we've got them making decisions again, but now it's a little bit different checking of their shoulder. Now they're opening up their body and checking whether they should open up and continue to pass the ball forward, or should they lay the ball back? So obviously there's a functional component to this. If a wide midfielder is checking to the sideline to receive the ball from a defender, the defender passes it in, but that midfielder checks their shoulder and looks and sees that the forward is marked and can't open up and play forward up to that forward player, then the midfielder needs to pass it back to the defensive player. So, this is something that can be applied directly to what the players are doing in the game. And obviously you can take this whole thing and you can flip it around as well and have them doing the opposites. The opposite, I think, is a powerful tool. So using that to get the players to really think on their feet is a great way to go. There are 100 different patterns that you could do. These are kind of the first 3 that I use. First, turning without regard for the color of the cones, just working on our passing, working on our turning, then being aware of what color is shown, where to turn, then opening up so that we're checking our shoulder from a different angle. So these are the 3 that I begin with my players, and I'm sure as coaches you can come up with many more ideas, and there are many more at socceriq.com that you can check out that are all revolving around using these and other visual tools. So I hope you enjoy that and try it with your teams.